much for everybody coming out. So this is our short-term rental Airbnb Q&A panel. How this is going to work, I am your moderator for the evening. I am REI James on YouTube, REI James Wilcox on Instagram. And tonight, I have a very special panel with me that I've hand-selected each for their certain criterias and expertise in their own fields. What we are going to do is everyone will get a short little intro. Heath down on the end will start into a little bit about Lexington specific words that he wants to say. And then I have some pre-made questions that I will answer and toss to the panel first. And then the second half, we will open it up to the floor, okay? So please reserve your questions to the end. So thank you all once again for coming. On to my left, our very first panelist is Patrick Carter. He is the president at Stay Over at Red River Gorge. He's creating one-of-a-kind experiences for guests in the gorge. Patrick has been building short-term investments for owners from various ground-up cabins, cottages, and RV camping lot projects to create an escape to nature while still having access to modern amenities. You can find him on Stay Over at Red River Gorge on Facebook, and he also did an excellent, which I highly recommend, Keys to the Commonwealth podcast with Landry Fields. Definitely make sure that you listen to that because it is full of jam-packed info on Red River Gorge and some of the investment opportunities out there. Next to him is wonderful Lyda Faust. She is the co-owner at Lake Cumberland Glamping. She has one of the most unique niches in the short-term rental space. Lyda also works in one of the hottest water destinations in the state, and I don't think anybody would argue with that if they've been to Lake Cumberland. Lake Cumberland is no stranger to those looking for an adventure, and Lyda is capturing those tourist dollars in a very creative way. Lyda and her family bring an individual operator perspective while using social media to drive traffic to her safari tents, bell tents, and primitive camping experiences. You can find her at Lake Cumberland_glamping on Instagram or Lyda Ray, R-A-E, on Instagram as well. Next to her, I have Nancy Hammond, who is the owner at Scenic Cabin Rentals, and she's one of our most seasoned short-term rental operators. And that experience definitely shows with Scenic Cabin Rentals being one of the most well-known rental companies in the Red. Scenic Cabin Rentals is a real estate brokerage specializing in cabin rentals, cabin sales, and raw land sales. They offer insight into the long history of rentals in the Red River Gorge and run bookings through their own business website as well as the Airbnb platform. You can find them at Scenic Cabin Rentals on Facebook. And of course, I'm sure you're all very familiar with Heath Green at Kentucky Life Property Management. He is the short-term rental coordinator over there. He always operates out of an abundance-focused mindset and gives up his time to share and help educate others in the short-term rental space. Heath creates one-of-a-kind experiences for guests on Airbnb. He brings an eye for automation, Kentucky hospitality, and incredible response times to all his guest needs. And he has probably one of the best Instagram handles, which is the_king_of_B&B. Sorry, that one is taken. So I will open the floor up a little bit to Heath that would like to say a little bit about Lexington short-term rentals specifically.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people have questions, and we kind of presented this on our last event that Kentucky Life hosted about Lexington and the Fayette County area, and a lot of people have started to see after COVID a transition to kind of occur. If you've been in the short-term rental space before, it's kind of started to flip-flop in Fayette County. It's been a little bit more price competitive. I just recently attended a conference, and one of my biggest takeaways, which can sometimes be perceived as a negative, was our area is starting to get a little bit overly saturated. And I think we should all, as investors, start to pull that saturation word out of our vocabulary. Because there's a reason why people are investing in this market, Central Kentucky, Fayette County, in the short-term rental space. It means that there's a large demand. So with saturation also comes more competitiveness. And I think you're going to start to see what other kind of rental you kind of look like. And I know these are some of the questions that James sent over to the panel beforehand, so I won't try to jump into those. But destination style properties are starting to be something on the increase. Luxury rentals are something that are going to be on the high increase. I mean, we're launching rentals that are renting for $600 to $2,000 a night more right now than we are our smaller hand units. So with that being said, you have to be more amenity driven. You're going to have to be more competitive to your peers. And you're going to have to learn how to use automation, pricing tools, and things to make yourself more adaptable to the market as we continue to grow and change. So just some quick stats for our market in general within Fayette County. Our occupancy rate has actually gone up. We're at 63% occupancy. We're definitely much more of a seasonality compared to like the Red River Gorge, even Frankfort and Georgetown, or some other markets that we manage. Fayette County I see is much more of a March through October. October is always going to be your busiest month in Fayette County, followed by August and then April. So just to kind of note that. We're still at a B plus rating. Earlier this year we were at a B. I think there's some reasoning behind all of that. There's some development going on in central Kentucky and even in Fayette County that's kind of increased that demand. And I think you've also seen some people step away because of the real estate market from short-term rentals. So we've even had clients that have recently sold to capitalize on the opportunity of selling at a higher rate. So that's something that you're kind of seeing right now as well. But you're also kind of starting to see investors' mindsets change. And I always use this analogy too when I talk to clients is if you go to the West Coast and you're wanting to visit LA, you can also look to stay 30 minutes to 45 minutes or 30 miles to 60 miles even outside of a major metropolitan area. The same thing goes for Central Kentucky. A lot of the people that are traveling into this area are traveling in within a 300-mile radius. A lot of our guests are coming from Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Virginia, and Tennessee. So they're traveling within a short distance, but all of our West and East Coast or larger metropolitan area people that are coming in, they don't mind a drive. So I always use the example, we have a big cabin in Campbellsville, Kentucky that we predominantly host a lot of people coming into the Bourbon Trail. So they come in, they'll stay there. They don't mind to be in a car for an hour and a half to an hour that day because they're traveling and they want an experience. So that's something that you're kind of starting to see a little bit more now. The people that are staying in the Fayette County area, if you're launching a short-term rental or you already own one, you really need to understand who your avatar is. Who is the guest that you are hosting and you're trying to target? If you don't know that, then it's going to be a game that you're continuously trying to play catch up with. You can't predominantly focus on traveling nurses or healthcare professionals or people that are trying to stay 3+ nights, but also trying to hit the people that are coming in for one night for a concert or the Bourbon Trail for a quick trip. You need to kind of find your lane and pick it, and then you're going to start to see success once you start to implement things as well from there. So, just a little tidbit.
Yeah, that is great insight. So as a reminder, Kentucky Life is a sponsor tonight. They have provided all the food and drink for you all, so everybody give them a round of applause. Also, the space is provided by Awesome Inc., as you probably have guessed. They do shared office spaces, podcasting rooms, and so you definitely want to check them out, especially for a small business or anything like that, looking for the space maybe outside of your house now, if you're ready to get out of there. So definitely give them a look as well. So as I mentioned, we do have some pre-made questions. For those that have asked early, they get preference on their questions. And to start into those, do rural Airbnbs do as well as the city, as long as amenities are available and you're within 15 to 20 minutes to activity vacation spots and to major interstate or Lexington, etc., and our panel will jump in as they see fit. For that question.
I would say they do better. I mean, I know specifically the Gorge area does very well in terms of kind of short-term rental. I mean, it goes back to what Heath was saying. I mean, like, as long as you know who your target customer is, as long as you're separating yourself from everybody else. So like, just don't build something that somebody else is building. Don't have the same amenities that everybody else is having. Differentiate yourself. I think the pandemic really helped our area out quite a bit. Whereas like you look at like this overpopulated areas, like the city, everything was shut down. People weren't really traveling as much within the city, so people were trying to get out, enjoy the space. I don't know if you saw the same thing in your area.
Yeah, I will add to that. And like you said, creating something different with glamping. I mean, cabins are fantastic.
Yeah.
But you might have the same person 6 months down the road that wants something, they're looking for something different again. So, we've got that same attraction, but in a different location, offering different amenities. While I don't personally, because I'm a little country, I don't know if y'all can tell, if that wasn't obvious enough. So I don't know that I would personally consider Somerset, Burnside, that kind of area rural. I'm sure a lot of people would. Because it takes a little bit to get to the interstate, parkway, all that good stuff. But certainly during the pandemic, we had, and we're only on our sophomore season, so I can't really say the judge of we were slow before and after, but we're still providing something that is an attraction to come for. I'd say our farthest visitor to date has been from Virginia, maybe. So we're working our way out. What says you?
Well, I agree. I mean, I don't have any city Airbnb, so I have no comparison. But I've always been rural. I've been in the gorge over 20 years, and it's just increasing every year as far as visitors. I've been on the tourism board. I developed a tourism board down there. So we've just seen tremendously increase in visitors, basically because of the tourist board, advertising, and now because of all the activities in the gorge. So, you have the zip line, you got the underground canoe, the outside canoe, horseback riding out there. So it's becoming more of a family vacation area. They're saying sometimes you'll see numbers of 750,000, 800,000, 900,000 visitors to the gorge, and 15,000 rock climbers. And they really started the gorge. They were the ones that started coming down for 40, 50 years ago. So it's grown. But with that competition, there's been a ton of cabins, yurts, glamping, cargo containers, tree houses, you name it. All of that has exploded in the gorge. So there's just so much more opportunities for a tourist and a visitor. You can expand your horizons. You don't, if you want to do the cabins, there's over 500 cabins now. If you want to do glamping, you can just pick and choose. So it's getting crowded. It's very crowded. They have studies, it's 40, 45 minutes now to get through the gorge on a Saturday, to get through the tunnel. So it's getting very crowded. I recommend visiting during the week. So it's a lot less crowded.
Wintertime's great too.
That's gorgeous.
And winter hiking is my favorite time. So,
Oh, yeah.
Fabulous to see the cliffs and the gorges in the winter. That's the best time. So,
No bugs, no chiggers.
right.
Yeah.
Or snakes.
Thanks. Oh my gosh.
I'll say this, if you guys are looking to invest in like certain areas, the gorge is great, Lexington is great, but like when you go to pick an area, like look at the area and look at the demographics that visit that area. Look at this if it's seasonal at all. I mean that's gonna be a huge play in terms of like are you gonna because like the gorge, like back when we started in 2018, so you've been doing it a lot longer than we have, but like the restaurants and stuff would shut down.
Yeah.
A lot of the cabins would shut down. They would winterize them. And so now it's becoming less seasonal and more of just like a year-round family thing for people to do. And I think it's because of the amenities and the restaurants that are staying open. So look at the area that you're going to be in, kind of figure out whether it's seasonal or not, and then you can kind of plan your, do your business plan around that.
Yeah, and I definitely think too, like it depends on what you consider rural. Because there's parts of the gorge even that I wouldn't even consider rural. I mean, if you're right off the exit, yes, you're in a rural area compared to Fayette County. However, you're attracting a different demographic than you are somebody that's probably going to be staying in a cabin or a tree house or some kind of container cabin that has zero cell service, potentially no internet service, and something like that. So what we've seen...
Still a problem.
Yeah. What we've seen from the properties that we manage, since we manage in a larger demographic, our properties that are outside of Fayette County probably stay higher occupied year-round, especially when you are looking at like Frankfurt area. I think is great. The Harrodsburg market has been great. Getting ready to launch some more down there. I think some of these smaller communities that are typically considered to most investors as rural are starting to kind of pull from the Fayette County area. But I think you just have a little bit more opportunity and kind of don't allow yourself to be seasonal, especially with the amenities that you can kind of offer. There's so many check boxes on Airbnb and VRBO on things that you can offer as far as amenities go. They're on there for a reason. The more that you can click, the better off your odds are from an algorithm standpoint for your listing to continuously populate, especially with the updates that Airbnb just recently pushed out. So like everybody said, I think it's understanding your demographic, understanding how much money you're willing to invest initially. In this market, you have to pay to play. You have to pay to play to enter, and you have to pay to play to furnish, and then you have to pay to play to add amenities. If you're not willing to do all three of those, then probably short term's not the space for you, and you need to stay predominantly in traditional management because it is such a hospitality, high touch point business.
Absolutely, and to jump in on that as well, we just picked up a new property that will be doing short-term rental as well. So if you want to have really good pictures and something that's really going to be different and amenity that wows them, for example, we're doing a retro game room, we'll have several arcade machines, and that gives somebody a reason to come back. And so my arcade machine, Ms. Pac-Man, a fan favorite, also keeps track of the high scores. So if you have some buddies over, a little competition starts up, have a couple brewskis, that gives you a reason to come back. So definitely be thinking of creative ways, of low-cost ways, because I try to save money too, just like everybody else, but ways that you can think of creative ways for them to come back. So this person here would like to hear about cleaning fees in relation to the number of nights booked. Also, how much to charge to cover the time of hiring, cleaning, and the time it takes to do laundry for larger properties like 4 bedrooms, 2 baths with 9 to 10 beds, roughly. So basically, how do you judge what to charge for cleaning fees and how are you handling those, especially for larger properties?
Ours is based on the size of the cabin, number of beds to turn, and the overall size of the place. It doesn't matter how many nights you stay. You could stay, 20 nights. There's still going to be 1 cleaning fee. So I mean, and I think that's pretty common. Like, so if you did something different than that, people are going to see that and they're going to see it as maybe price gouging or something. So I would kind of stay in line with what your competition's doing. Look at your competition, see what everybody's offering, and then kind of base your cleaning fees on that. In terms of laundry and stuff like that, I mean it takes our cleaners a couple hours to turn a property. I mean, and it's no easy feat. They come out sweating pretty good. So and that's our highest turnover category, and I'm sure you guys can probably attest to that. I mean, it's very hard to keep a good cleaning crew. So
they're the life expectancy of the success of your rental.
They are. They're the make it or break it. They're the people where that get you the good reviews. If you want those great reviews, you have to pump your cleaning staff up and get them going.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that because I am my own cleaning crew. So before I get to go out on the lake, I gotta clean the daggone tent. That's fun. So I will say, so we have a $30 cleaning fee one time. Don't charge anything crazy. But I mean, I take a tent, my mom takes a tent, my sister might take a tent, my other sister might take the shack that we've got, and we get it knocked out. We strip the beds, we have replacements for each. So honestly, we're only spending maybe 30 minutes in each tent in the cabin. So it's not anything astronomical. They're easy to get in and out of. Typically, the people that rent it keep it fairly clean. So we get lucky. Mostly families are our tenants, our renters rather. So they pack it all in, pack it all out. We get in, we get out. We're in and out in 30 minutes. $30 cleaning fee. Wham, bam, thank you, we're out. Ready to go for the next renter. So
Excellent.
I think that
Need to book with us.
It's cheap.
But to also bank off of that, I get to control how clean it is. If I see that there's dust on a lamp, I'm gonna swap that real quick because, I might miss out on 10 minutes on the boat. Probably don't need it anyways. So I get to control that. That's mine to control, and I don't know if I could ever hand that off. Maybe one day we're gonna hire you to come in and do all that, but manage it. But for now, I am very happy being able to get in every time we see it. If there's something wrong, and it has happened, someone has damaged something, I'm the one that sees it. I file it with Airbnb. I've got it taken care of, and I know where it stands. So
Right.
that's where like Cumberland Glamping sits on all that.
It's a good per month.
Yeah.
We're the same. We base it pretty much on the size of the cabin. And you have to base it on how many loads of laundry and all that. So you have to build that into your cleaning fee. But again, it's the industry standard. So that's what it is for me in the gorge. Everybody just pays one fee depending on the size. And then we assign housekeeping, we accrue. So most of the time we have 2 people going in because we have a lot of large cabins. And we don't do the laundry that often at the cabin because we have a couple of commercial laundries because it takes too long. If you're gonna wait for a load of laundry to dry, that's like an hour, and towels take forever. So we bring it back and usually run it through our laundry, and our same thing, our housekeepers take clean linens with them all the time, just strip the bed, bring it to laundry, and do everything in-house there.
Exact same. I think it's all too, that's the make or break like we had said, but 2 is all how you systematize everything. I think you can never over systematize the cleaning, especially with expectations and standards. You obviously, first impressions from pictures and when a guest walks in, that's the selling point of any short-term rental. But you're also looking at ways that you can minimalize from the cleanliness standpoint, that it's not high-touch areas or things that can be moved. Because if you own short-term rentals, you know this, everything gets moved from the couch to the beds. It can be there for 24 hours and the whole house is rearranged in some capacity. So you're always looking for ways to kind of like help your cleaners out. What we do is we walk every property. It's kind of based on size and number of beds, but to make it a win situation for our cleaning crew, but also make it a win situation for us as well. We don't upcharge cleaning. It's a direct pass through to our cleaners. That way they feel like they're winning. It's always the same fee, whether they stay 1 night or 15 nights. The only time we charge more is if they stay over 30 days, just because we're probably going to be doing a deep clean. And 2, you're just kind of making sure that you have all the extra resources that they need. Most of the time, cleaners do not do laundry in-house. It just takes too long. So making sure you have the extra backups readily available for them to do quick turns. If they can get a load of towels done while they're there, great. If not, they're taking it with them and moving on to the next. And I think making sure that you have an open form of communication with your cleaners is rule number 1. They are your eyes and ears. They're the first people in after a guest checks out to report any kind of discrepancies or issues with the property. And I think, I always say, make it a win-win. Like we just did this the other day with something that we launched. We ended up increasing it an extra $10 just because after cleaning it a couple of times, it needed that extra increase just based on the laundry and the workload. It's okay to adapt and do things like that. We build in the tax amount for our cleaners too. So if the cleaning fee was $75, we're charging $80. So they're getting $79 and some change for that clean to help make it a win situation for them. So it's not eating into their cost too. But you want to make sure it's a win situation where you're not having a high cleaning fee that's eating into your nightly rate, because that's when you're going to start to see issues as well.
Yeah. Or people will start shopping around that. And the other thing is short-term rentals are in the gorge because it's such a heavily forested area. If you have a few days in between rentals, we'll send somebody back out because you can get a spider web overnight in the gorge, and you get mice poop in a cabin overnight in the gorge. There's a problem. So if you have more than 3 days in between a rental, 3 or 4, you really need to get someone just to do a quick walkthrough and make sure there was nothing came up since it was empty.
Awesome. In regards to online images for your listings, is offering a floor plan or a walkthrough tour, which is a 3D Matterport scan for those that aren't familiar, a necessity? Are there restrictions as to what can be posted on the Airbnb or VRBO when it comes to pictures?
There are restrictions. Unfortunately, you can't upload some of the walkthroughs and that kind of thing, but I do think floor plans are nice. We always make sure our pictures, a lot of hosts don't do this, and it personally drives me crazy. They just throw pictures on and then start doing all the attractive pictures up front and then everything else at the end, and you can't tell what is going on inside the property. So our first 4 pictures are always something that is attractive, but we replicate those photos in our listing. So if I have a bedroom photo or a living room photo, you're gonna see that same photo twice because I'm gonna do it. Once you start to click through, you're gonna start to be able to look like you're walking through the house. So every time you're clicking, you're kind of walking through the house. We also film videos and have that on our listings to say, hey, if you have more questions, please reach out. And then that way we can start that form of communication with a potential guest. You'll get a lot of people that ask, hey, is there, even though it's on there, people don't like to read, is there a first floor bedroom? Is there a walk-in shower? Are there any steps at the property at all? Those kind of things that they'll ask you. So we do video walkthroughs and do it by room to kind of explain all of those things that we can send to them. It also gives them a visual representation as well. And I say imagery is probably the number one most important thing. Spending extra money on professional pictures is going to be worth it in the long run. I mean, me personally, I'm in the industry, and anytime I book a property, that's the first thing I look at. I'm looking at the pictures and then looking at the kind of bedding before I ever look at pricing, reviews, or location.
I would totally agree with what he said. I mean, the way the description of your property and the pictures of your property are probably two of the most important things to get, other than the price and the reviews. I mean, and the reviews are going to come from good housekeeping and maintenance and good guest communication. But the pictures is probably the number one thing. And we do the same thing. I mean, we order our pictures like you're going through the house. I think it gives the user a good like image of what they're getting, what you can expect to get out of this property. And you want to show the property for what it is. Like if you got an eyesore over here to the left-hand side of your cabin, you probably want to either describe it or take it or have it in the picture. That way people know they get there and they're not surprised. You know, the last thing you'd want is to catch somebody off guard when they're coming in and they're staying, because then that's going to give you a bad review. And the rankings, like all these third-party sites, Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, Hotels.com, Booking.com, anywhere you put your listing, they're looking at those rankings. They're looking at those reviews, that their customer feedback. Their goal, just like Google and all these other like big online platforms, is create good user experience. They want people to come back and use their platform. If these people are having a bad experience, you know, when they get there, they're gonna go to VRBO next time and not Airbnb. So you could completely miss out on a customer. One thing I would highly suggest is just not being on one platform as well. I would use cross platforms. So I would use Airbnb, I would use VRBO, I would use as many as you can do. You're gonna get pull from different pockets of demographics for each one of those platforms. You know, we put ours on a lot of different platforms. It's a lot to manage, it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to sync your calendars and all that, but I think it's worth it in the long run. Because if something happens to Airbnb overnight, your business isn't just like plummeting, you know. But just yeah, I think Heath did an excellent job on that. Good job, man.
Thanks. I think in the cabin market, those kind of plays a little bit different than hotels and motels that are kind of a standard that everyone expects, but with the cabins, particularly the court, they can be so different. So honesty in description and honesty in pictures, I think, is so important. You just have to, like, a lot of our cabins might have a super narrow staircase because we don't have any, there's been no zoning or building code. So you want to describe that because you can't have an older person or young kids trying to get up that. So you just have to have really good pictures, be totally honest in the description. Like if you're in a cabin, you're looking over someone's propane tank, you better describe that or else someone's going to say, you know, I didn't come here to see that. So, I would say just, you know, whatever, just be very honest. That way if you get a complaint, you can say, well, it's in my description. You know, if you read it in sentence 3, it's whatever, it's right there. If you have a picture of it, then they have no way to complain.
I'm kind of on the flip side of all these people's points. Because when you look inside the tent, you see what you got. So, you kind of get the full view when you open it up. But that's the fun of it. So I will say the photos. So this year, got a new iPhone just like everybody else. I had pictures. I have this big, nice, fancy professional camera that I went through and I took pictures of everything. The first year, obviously, on Lake, I don't know how familiar y'all are with Lake Cumberland. There's not a property on there that has a solid patch of grass. So not really fantastic landscaping on the first year. So second year, got me an iPhone, started snapping pictures, great photos. Posted the new photos to our Airbnb listing, just replaced them. And posted those photos onto our Facebook page, and it got like, it went insane. I want to say that we had like 50,000 views. I mean, it was crazy. So the photos made a world of difference. They just do so much more justice to the property now that we've got some foliage going up and some flowers blooming. It's just gorgeous. The sun was shining that day too, so sister, I mean, man, you're beautiful. So they made a world of difference. And two, the biggest draw to our tents, which I feel like we really planned on when we put them up, is we put them on this ginormous deck. Because you're coming to lakefront. You don't want to sit on the grass. Who wants to do that? They want to sit on a deck. So we built these huge decks in the front of each one of the tents to make sure that our guests have adequate space to sprawl out, put their chairs up. We also provide chairs, but if they want to put a hammock up, we've had tons of people put hammocks on their porches. But we snap pictures of that and make sure we still kind of do a walkthrough. Mm-hmm. So we have the front, we have the walk up too, and we also take pictures throughout the tent. We take pictures of the bed, that way they can see the linen, they can see that they're nice and they're clean, and we take pictures of the coffee maker and the refrigerator and all the AC unit, which is, of course, glamping, obviously, you no AC, but we do the same kind of walkthrough, but I will say, just picture-wise, obviously, I don't have to do a layout because you can see it. People know how to come, you can walk, you can see it. But I still send a property map, just kind of as a side note, I still send a property map after they book, just to say, hey, there's tent here, tent here, tent here, tent here, shack here, bathhouse here, just so you know where everything's at. Makes a world of difference.
We do the same thing on our check-in instructions. If an area has like multiple properties in it, or it's like a neighborhood-ish area, and there is a map available, we'll send it with the check-in instructions. And I'll say this, like, just because you got some pictures done doesn't mean you you can't ever change them.
Right.
Like,
Make a world of difference.
If your property is missing the mark on occupancy rate, or you can't figure out pricing or whatever, you can mess around with it a little bit. But I mean, try changing your description, like your marketing description. Try changing up the order of your photos. Maybe the photos, or maybe try getting new photos, or maybe adding some decor to the property. There's a lot of different things that you can do if a property isn't doing well on Airbnb. It may not be the property, it may be the marketing in the property.
And understanding your competition too, so like looking at your direct, like who's the closest proximity, price point, like who's your direct competitor. And I always use an analogy as, are you a Walmart, are you a Target, or are you like a Nordstrom? You know, which kind of short-term rental are you, and know that, and know who your customer is, and make sure that you're always beating and being above 30% of your competitor. If not, especially if you're not on the first 2 pages of someone's search when they're looking for you, you're going to fall back and you're going to be the last to be booked. Those 2 pages are going to be the first properties that are going to be booked continuously. You're going to be on the back end, so you're kind of like the overflow of people finding things. So it's okay to change things. If something's not working for you and you change out a couch, throw a new couch in there and take a new picture and put it on. The more active you are, the more descriptive you can be, the better off you're going to be.
And to touch on that point as well, this is the old SEO trick when it comes to Google. Google likes to see that you're cleaning up your pages and revisiting them. Probably Airbnb probably does the same algorithmically, that it's looking in your dashboard to see how many times you're checking your listing, possibly updating your description, moving your pictures around. Even if you're not making a whole lot of changes to it, it might be seen as possible a spring cleaning, and that you're giving more attention to your listing. Airbnb will obviously like that, so you might want to think about that strategy as well.
I'd say guest communication too is huge. Response time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if somebody asks you a question, you need to be really on it.
And it's not a traditional rental where you can get back to your resident in 24 hours. If you're waiting 24 hours to get back to your guest, you're probably automatically to a 4-star review. Because the simplest thing is the internet not working, or battery's not in the remote working properly. They might only be there for 24 hours. So you're not responding at a high touch point level and providing service and hospitality, then you're already falling behind.
Certainly. So our next question has to do with room shares. someone who's not familiar with that, think of more of a roommate type of situation where you share common area spaces. This person would like to know about offering a guest room and private full bath upstairs, no separate entry to the house, front door only. Any comments on room share type of situations on Airbnb?
Well, I've seen Dahmer, so I mean, I don't know if I would ever do that, but I know it's popular in bigger cities. I mean, we don't do it.
Well, we don't do it, but I do know the Rock climbers are doing it. So we have a lot of young people that have sold some houses too in some of the outskirt areas, and they are always looking for roommates. So all of them are trying to Airbnb a room in their house. Again, that's like what I call a roommate, like a college roommate, because they're just trying to share expenses. So that's popular with that millennial age group of boards.
Do you know how often they actually get booked?
They get quite a few people who will be a long-term roommate, like a couple of months, because a lot of these climbers, they're coming in
seasonal.
for months.
Yeah, they're
It's on.
seasonal. They'll come in for like all spring season,
Right.
climb, and then they'll go to their next destination and do it there.
We don't offer that service, it's just not in our wheelhouse or expectations. Our properties have to be 100% STR 100% of the time. I have some friends that do it, they have great success. You're obviously at a lower price point, and I think it just comes with expectations and standards. A lot of automation with locks, but you're also gonna have to be the person that's gonna have to keep your house up. Because they're sharing your kitchen, they might share the entryway, they might share the steps or the living room, whatever it might be. So you're gonna have to be somebody that's willing to have a roommate, because they're gonna overstep their boundaries. They're not always just gonna walk straight up the stairs and stay upstairs. They're gonna come downstairs and utilize those spaces too. And they're judging you on that. So I would say make sure you have your standards and
So you
expectations.
need an interview with that person to make sure your lifestyles are fairly
Yeah.
similar.
100%.
Well, I stayed at this Airbnb down in Tampa recently, and it was not listed on there that it was a shared space.
Mm.
The dwelling was on the back side of this. It's like a typical Florida house, and it was just another room that they had walled off, and it was really nice, like outdoor kitchen. The space was super nice. It showed very well on Airbnb. The description was great. And then I got there and the guy was like fiddling around outside. And I thought he was gonna leave, and then he just like literally just went like right next door. And I'm like, okay, so now I got this shared space, this outdoor kitchen space, and this hot tub that I'm sharing with this other family. And it kind of made me, I was there on like a getaway, and I don't know, it made me a little uncomfortable. I left him a good review, but I gave him 4 stars because of it, and just made sure that other people knew what to expect. Like if you're looking for an awesome place, this is it. If you're looking for privacy, go somewhere else, because you're not going to get it.
Absolutely. So with this question, it has to do with a couple of items. So is it worth to pay for dynamic pricing if you have multiple short-term rentals and use multiple platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com? Which ones of these do you recommend?
I would say yes, absolutely. Dynamic pricing, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be in this space, like I said earlier, you have to pay to play, especially with the amount of competition coming in, and just the changes that are happening in all of the spaces on different platforms. I mean, we use like 6 different back-end systems that we use on the day-to-day basis just to help with a high touch point, to keep our properties at the level that they need to be. I think you're going to continue to see, especially as markets start to develop, you're going to have to be more price competitive. Unfortunately, as high touch point as it is, you can't be there 24/7. So you're going to have to pay for some services to be able to do that for you on a consistent basis, and just making sure that you're setting up parameters to Breeders' Cup's coming into town, and it's not automatically giving one price. You're probably going to manipulate and manually go in and change that price. But from your day-to-day schedule, you're probably going to see higher occupancy as long as you're within those standards. But I think you're going to have to start paying for those services if you're wanting to be competitive in long term.
Yeah, I think eventually it'll be like paid placement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I mean, like dynamic. I said yes, dynamic pricing. If you got one short-term rental, you could probably manage it yourself and do it manually. We did it manually for a long time. And then, dynamic pricing just really helps out. It's an automated tool that looks at different algorithms across the market and helps adjust your price.
And I think, yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say, like, I think that's the way that right now with these platforms, to pay to be on top, everybody would have that option to pay. So then it's like, how do you price that? All of these other tools are the way to do that before that's ever into effect.
Yeah.
So if you're paying for that now, you're already increasing your odds to be on those first 2 pages.
Yeah, but as it says, if you're really doing a couple of, you don't have to maybe have that expense unless you have more than 2 or 3. If you're starting out and you maybe don't want that, like I said, I'm like him. I'm like Patrick. We manually did it for years, so But now that we have quite a few, you need all the extra tools to help. But if you're managing just a few, you could probably adjust your own pricing.
Automate as much stuff as you can. I mean, that's huge. I mean, get you some operating procedures, implement them, and automate as much as you can. And it will make your life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, we're literally only listed on Airbnb. So we're not listed across the different platforms, and that's the way I like it. I kind of like to see ourselves. People show up and they're like, we never knew you existed. Like, it's on our 2nd season. So thanks for coming. But they kind of see it as like a little secret escape. Not a lot of people know about it, and that's the way I like it right now. Now, all the quick replies that you can do right now are certainly tools that we're utilizing, simply because we're getting a little big for our britches here. So if I can go in, type a quick reply, and change something super quick, I'm going to do it. If I can't, I'll text someone else in my family back, hey, can y'all handle this? Take care of it. So eventually we'll get to that point, but I'm still in the tiny seat. I'm the little woman.
Our guest services has we'll have questions, common questions that people will ask. And it's once you start doing it, you'll see the repetitiveness of the questions. And so once you answer one question, you can take that same response and just copy and paste it into another thing. So I mean, we have a sheet of questions that we just kind of copy and paste.
And they're always in your description, right?
No.
No.
I mean,
the questions
some of them are.
that I get are generally 95% of the time.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
That's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And too, with that, I mean, even your automated response when somebody books, have some of those frequently asked questions already in that messaging, and then you're already answering it before they ever had the chance to answer or ask.
Awesome. So the next question has to do with SEO. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, if anybody would like to know. So can maximizing SEO be done ourselves? Is it worth it to pay someone to teach us the tricks? Does any company do that for the Airbnb platform specifically?
So I was in SEO, SEM industry for 10 years. It is a massive space. It is a lot to learn, and it's constantly changing. Every day. Every day Google's changing their algorithm, every single day. And so I think it is worth the money to pay somebody to do it. Absolutely, 100%. It's like, can I build a house? Sure, I can build a house. But do I know anything about building a house? I mean, I know a little bit, probably enough to be dangerous. But I mean, it's like, where am I going to spend my time? Where am I going to make the most money? Like, sometimes it's just better to pay somebody to do it so you can do what you do best. And I think spending your time, I think a lot of people want to be a jack of all trades. And it really just kind of bogs you down, and it kind of puts you in a hole. Like when I first started out in real estate, after I got out of marketing, I did long-term rentals, and I'm like type A personality, so I wanted to do everything myself. I couldn't trust anybody, and it's like and I just wanted to learn, and so I was just like this sponge that just wanted to build. But then as I got to this certain point, I kind of hit like a wall, because then I was still doing everything else and then still trying to grow, and it kind of prohibited my growth phase, and I kind of plateaued, and I didn't really like that. So I've kind of pulled back, and I started trusting people, and now I have people to do things for me, and I like to pay them to do it, and then I do what I do. So I like that. So, but yes, I would highly encourage you guys to
It's like you said, it's
to
well,
spend
well
money.
worth it, but again, if you're a company that you only have one or two, and if you're really smart millennial and you know
Yeah.
some of this Google stuff, and you can read Google Analytics, if you can call Google, they can walk you through it. They'll give you all the search terms, they'll tell you how to do all that, so if you've got some time, or like I said, you've got the millennial in your family that can do all that, one property, you can start out doing that, you say, because if you wanna pay for it, you're looking at probably $600,000 a month, and almost any company that's gonna wanna charge you that to do all this for you. So again, it depends on how many units you have, how much time you have, what your knowledge level or skill level is with the knowing the doable algorithms and that type of thing. You can give it a shot, and if you don't get the occupancy you want, then I say, yeah, go back and hire an SEO firm to help you out.
Yeah, I think it's especially important if you're gonna get into the direct booking space. I think a way to get around all of that is through social media, and tracking. So we track like all of our KPIs through every property. Our team has to report that weekly. And then we also track like where our guests are coming from. So if you're seeing like a slow time in your property, and predominantly you're coming from the Dayton, Ohio area, we'll get on Facebook and Instagram and run a targeted ad towards that property. And then that's doing the work for you. I mean, you can spend less than $100 and probably get several amount of bookings. If you know that a lot of people come from Dayton, Ohio to your area in April, we'll go ahead and open up your April calendar, run an ad for there, and then you've already pre-booked X amount of months in advance. So I think social media is a big platform to use too, especially if you're on the smaller platform, to divert from paying for SEO on a monthly basis.
Totally agree.
Social media is great because it's like sometimes you can fulfill a need that people don't even know they have.
Mhm.
Whereas like search engine marketing is like, I know what I want, I'm searching for this. And so I totally agree with you. I mean, like social media is huge. Like you can create awareness and just the want for somebody, probably, I'd say you
That's
probably,
how I used to drive
yeah,
business to my.
I'd say yours kills it on that. So
Yeah, because perception's reality. So, I mean, if you had a random cancellation or you didn't even have a cancellation, but a key weekend's still open for you, and you throw it on social media that, oh my gosh, this weekend just opened, we're running 10% off, and you're not really running 10% off. Perception's reality. They're going to get on there, and you're probably going to book within a couple of minutes. So I think it's a great tool to utilize.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment on that because I've been working in the web space pretty much since high school. And I would actually be a little bit of the opposite on that. I think that you can do a lot of it yourself. And I've seen a lot of people that are working in the SEO space that to me should not be working in the SEO space because they act like they know more than what they probably do, and they charge a pretty penny for that. I wouldn't say they take advantage of you, but I would be very skeptical and I want them to show proof of work, not proof of stake for those crypto people. So, but no, I want them to put their money where their mouth is. So I would maybe preface that with a little asterisk though, that maybe look into them if you're thinking about hiring an SEO company for your Airbnb listing specifically. This next one is something that I'm sure we've all seen a little bit over time, especially for the younger crowd. What is the difference between rental arbitrage versus co-hosting? What are the benefits of each? And since there might be people that don't know the difference there, if one of you all would please jump in and explain the difference between those two.
Go ahead.
I don't know, I mean, I was gonna say rental arbitrage, and what I looked up is basically in my industry, what I call just leasing. So you could do a lease back of a property and then you turn around and rent it out for short-term rentals. Again,
subletting.
Subletting, yeah. So I don't know what's going on in the cities and all that, but I know there are some companies in our region that are doing that might lease back a property from somebody, a cabin, pay them, the same monthly lease payment, and then they might turn around and sublet it out for short-term rentals. So of course you could do that if you own the property. Otherwise you have to be a realtor in order to do it for other people's property. So that's the only caveat there. Whereas I think co-hosting, we had somebody do that in our campground, they co-hosted. So like we have a lot of owners who live out of state and they just bought a property, so they may want to co-host on Airbnb, so they may have a housekeeper or a maintenance person, someone like that, be their co-host because they got somebody on site that's going to handle the inquiry and do the cleaning and the maintenance because they live away from the area and they can't be there. So when we've had co-hosting, that's what they've done.
I would say a lot of the long-term leases, they don't allow subletting. I don't know, I mean, like, all my long-term leases, I did not allow subletting. For that specific reason, I don't know, like, I don't want people, like, just having random people in there who I don't know anything about. It's more liability, I feel like, on me, because I'm the one renting it out as my property, right? And it's like, my insurance, whatever, everything would fall on me, so, I don't know. Do you guys do anything like that?
So I personally do rental arbitrage. We have a client that owns a multi-unit property. They weren't willing to take the risk in doing a short term, even after advising them. So I personally rented out one of their units and I'm running it as a short term rental for them. It's not as popular in our market compared to a larger metropolitan area. You do have a lot more risk as a landlord just because you have somebody else renting it to multiple people. However, if you're renting it to the right person, they're going to be your best resident. Just because they understand the name of the game, they're having to keep the property up to a certain standard for their guests to be able to actually maximize income. With rental arbitrage too, you're going to be, I mean, I can't think of his last name. His name's Sean, but he owns he does not own, rental arbitrage is 140 units across the United States and makes almost $10 million in income per year. But owns nothing. I think it's definitely an opportunity, especially if you're a person that's not willing to take the risk on purchasing a property. But you also have to be strategic too to make sure it's going to perform, because you're not going to be able to rent it under market value. You're going to have to pay market value. And typically the best way to get into something with rental arbitrage is doing a longer term lease. So let's say you come in at 2 years and you're asking for that first month or 2 months free just to be able to get the property up and going, because you're going to have to furnish it and get it ready from there. I think you'll probably start to see rental arbitrage infiltrate our market a little bit more, especially in Fayette County as things continue to develop. And people are especially from the East and West Coast, pulling money here, but don't necessarily aren't worrying necessarily about the return, so to speak. They're just wanting someone qualified that's taking care of the property.
Well, you have, just make sure your lease is airtight as far as, expenses, liability, who pays for furnishing, who pays for the appliances that are gonna go bad. You have to have all of that. You can allow smoking, pests, all of that. You have to have all that spelled out, very strict in that lease.
I mean, short-term rentals, you're gonna have more wear and tear on your property, than a long-term, I think. And it really depends on your tenant, to say that, because I've had some horrible long-term renters. But, I think in the short-term game in general, I'd say for us, about 90 to 95% of our tenants would treat the house as their own. And then we have about 5% that don't. And I got some pretty good stories on that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do too.
Please let someone ask the question, your horror stories. Okay. I do not have that one, but I would love that one. So everybody knows I'm a pretty straight shooter, and rental arbitrage, I think, is something that we probably saw a lot of pre-COVID. I had some nice conversations with a lot of investors down in Nashville that were doing a lot of arbitrage. I would like to know where those people were in 2020 and see what happened with them. I've always told people that I would much rather be an owner than a renter, because there are certain advantages to owning real estate and being the owner and not the renter. However, I do acknowledge that there's probably some opportunity for the right entrepreneur, usually younger, that wants to get in the rental arbitrage game. But in current markets where they are now, I would definitely encourage some caution on using Airbnb arbitrage, because there is high startup costs and should be interesting over the next 6 months.
So if anybody wants to do arbitrage in Red River Gorge, just let me know. I will do a net lease with you guys. I'll guarantee that, and we can go from there.
I will say this too, I'm not an attorney or a tax person or whatever. However, there are ways that if you are an investor to do rental arbitrage with the property you actually own yourself. You're purchasing it in one LLC and you're going back around, because most banks or lenders aren't giving you money for short-term rentals because there's just the infrequency of data there for them. They kind of are a little bit nervous about them. But if you come in under a different LLC or a different entity and are renting the property on a 12-month lease, that's something that you can present to them, and then you're actually the tenant, but you're actually the owner as well. So I think you're kind of starting to see that become more prevalent in this space, especially with investors who are really trying to play the game.
Yeah, the lenders have really tight restrictions on short-term rentals. They want to see numbers, but I mean, I've worked with some really good lenders that you can provide like a lot of data to, like comparable property. You can show them like your occupancy rates, number of nights, the revenue is throwing off, and they love it. They really do. I've worked with 2 different lenders recently that have been done really well. So.
Awesome. So I think this is the question that everyone's on everybody's mind that I was hoping that someone will ask, but I'll beat you to it. In a rising interest rate and inflationary market, are you seeing a slowdown in bookings because of pocketbook squeeze that is happening? How are you planning for the future and advising your investor clients who may still be looking to expand their short-term rental portfolio?
I say no. People are still spending $6 in gas and they're still going to the Red River Gorge.
Yeah.
I mean, our occupancy in our markets outside of Fayette County are still in the 70%, if not higher. I mean, last month in the Red River Gorge, our occupancies were almost in the 90s, if not some of them in the 90%. I have several properties that are booked in other areas throughout central Kentucky that are in the 24 nights plus. Is also marketing those properties, and back to knowing who your avatar is. We have several properties in Harrodsburg that we're renting out to longer term stays, traveling nurses, or people that are coming in from the Somerset area on assignment, but they're there Monday through Friday. They check out Friday, and well, guess what? Your peak time is going to be your weekends. So we're getting the people to pay for those weekends too. I don't see anything changing. I think as long as you know who your demographic is, and predominantly most people are traveling within a 300-mile radius, this is the new way of travel. People want automation, they want convenience, and they want Instagrammable moments.
I will say, we've had no problem with booking with the rising gas, fuel, all that good stuff, because they're still going to fuel their boat at the end of the day. So I will say, kind of the flip side of that is, had a lot more bookings from local people. So they just want a little night away, a little something romantic, or somewhere to throw their kids for the night that their kids are gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'll never forget the time that we sat on the lake in that tent. Just something a little different, but so we've had an uptick in local people, I will say that, but not a downtick in bookings whatsoever. People are still coming from 300 plus miles away. So I personally haven't seen that issue.
I think it's a little too early to tell yet because people still have their money. I think time will tell probably this fall or later on in the year. 'Cause I agree, we're probably seeing, and when we had the last big recession, downer, 2007, 8, 9, all that crap, our business went up because all the local people came locally. So our demographic is, 300 miles, Cincinnati, Louisville, Southern Indiana, Dayton. When times get tough, they're gonna blow off their beach vacations and Disney vacations and look for areas a little closer to home. But right now, we had such a bang gangbuster year last year because of the COVID pandemic. So I think, it will start to moderate a little bit because we're post-COVID and we're doing good right now, but we're also pre-high gas, right? Possibly pre-recession or whatever. So we just have to wait and see how the year plays out. But I agree, right now our bookings are doing great, and we still have higher occupancies, but I do expect it to take a tail off.
Yeah, we're seeing really high occupancy rates too. I mean, when we started in 2018, we were probably like even in the winter months, we were seeing like 30% occupancy rate. This year we were at 50 in some of the winter months, which is like when you consider like when the gorge used to shut down in the wintertime, used to be more seasonal. Like we talked about seasonality. You don't really see that anymore. And I think the gorge is a little bit more protected, just like Lexington. I mean, we're pulling from three major metro areas: Louisville, Cincinnati, Lexington. So when the gas prices go up or you got inflation goes up, people are going to stay closer to their circle, right? They're not going to go down to Tampa. They're not going to go out to California. They're not going to go over to Europe. They're going to stay more local. And I think kind of like when you pick an area, look at where you're pulling from. So like there's a national park called New River Gorge. New River Gorge, although it's a beautiful place, it's a national park, there's not a lot around it. There's like, you gotta drive quite a bit of ways to even get to it. The only major metro area really near Gatlinburg is Knoxville. So, you know, from here, you're driving, what, 3.5, 4 hours sometimes, depending on how fast you go. I mean, I think I agree with Nancy. I think time will tell with that, but I really, you know, our occupancy rates are great right now. You know, interest rates are going up, but I think interest rates go up, I think price is gonna have to go down. Something's gonna have to give. And traditionally, like when you look at real estate, like over the course of its lifetime, that's typically what happens. Interest rates go up, building prices and everything starts to go down. So it kind of equalizes itself out.
And I would say too, like, from our standpoint, we always advise our clients to make sure that for whatever the Red River Gorge is a little bit different of a market compared to other areas that we manage, but making sure that it's gonna, if for some reason a recession happened or financially you needed to turn the property into something else, that it's gonna either gonna be able to sell for something, hopefully that you purchased it for, or two, can turn it into a traditional rental and still have the ROI that you're looking to achieve. And I think there's several markets in Kentucky that are highly missed at this point in time, that have very little lodging, that if people were truly studying markets rather than just going off what everybody else is doing, they would probably see a better return, and being able to capitalize and infiltrate that area, have the review standpoint, have the success, so when other people start to follow and they're not able to hold on, you've already built your presence and you're gonna be able to withstand anything that kind of hits the market.
Right, I would agree. Things are, you know, it's been such a hot market, and even in the Gorge and rural America, prices have just skyrocketed. So we were talking earlier, and I would caution people about what kind of ROI are you expecting. If you're paying big dollars for a cabin now, you know, our biggest, we all book up on the weekends. There's only 52 weekends a year. So you can't squeeze any more weekend rentals out of 52 weekends. So if you're paying $200 plus, $250,000 for a cabin, you know, I don't know. And let's face it, with competition and saturation, nightly prices may start to come down as people compete. So you know, it all depends on how much you put down and all of that. But insurance rates have skyrocketed, even in the Gorge. Gosh, I started 20 years ago. We paid $500 a cabin. Some places want $3,000 a cabin for insurance. Now I have a commercial plan, so we can offer people a better deal. But all of those costs start to eat into your ROI. So you just really have to play the numbers if you're gonna come, you know, get a cabin now in the Gorge, just because of how high, you know, people are building 1-bedroom cabins and asking $275. You know, it's just getting crazy. So.
I would kind of consider ourselves lucky. We were able to pay for everything on our property in cash. So we don't have, and we do close down seasonally. So we shut down, and we get that. Last year, I think we shut down mid-October just because we were ready to take the tents down. Not necessarily because we weren't having as many bookings. We were just like, we were ready to go home.
Yeah.
So for us, the reason why we started on Airbnb is because we actually wanted to, the land is technically not paid for. It is on a 5-year contract or something like that. So we were like, if we can rent out the tents and pay for the land, we've got all that. My parents also own property next door. So we've got all of that acreage all to ourselves. And it's paid for by people that are wanting to rent it out. They want to experience this. We've got a beautiful property. Let's offer it. So that's why we did that. We wanted to make sure that if it all does come crumbling down, we ain't got to worry about it. It's paid for. It's good. It's Gucci. Let's bring them down, sell the tents, and let's go home. That's why we did that. We chose not to go into debt for this property other than the land. Everything else that's on it is bought and paid for cold hard cash. So
I mean, cash buyers
for
absolutely
us,
have an advantage, you know.
for us that was we have stable. We don't have to worry about dropping our rates. If we want to drop our rates to attract more people during a certain time, we can do so. It's not a big deal. It's cash in hand at the end of the day. That's all that matters to us.
Yeah, and like I always tell a lot of people, just be conservative with your numbers.
Yeah.
And you always make your money when you buy, right? So if you're being conservative with it, you'll be fine, I think, in the long run. Airbnb recently changed their platform to focus more on using categories to find properties. Have you seen any adjustments in your booking rate? And how would you encourage others to rank higher, increase views, and secure bookings in this new search result structure?
So less than 10% of our bookings come from Airbnb. So we are heavily focused on marketing. So we do a lot of search engine marketing, a lot of search engine optimization, a lot of social media marketing. We remarket to our current client base. So I really can't speak to what he's saying. So I'm probably not the best analyst up here to answer that question.
We're in the same boat. Most of our bookings come from people coming from social media pages, but they have to go book through Airbnb. That's the only reason why it's going through Airbnb. It's the only platform that we use. And that's just for ease of mind for us. But ours come predominantly from the social media aspect. They click to book, ta-da, it's all set. So
We only have the one category, but I would say there's a lot of various areas, like you need to, like the gorge, you could be Slade, you could be Stanton, you could be camping, they don't have like the Red River Gorge. Some platforms are started, I used to advocate years ago and try to get the tourism places to say, hey, you need a category like Red River Gorge, because nobody knows that day, no one knew Slade Camp, they don't know the rural American towns. Just like when you go to Yellowstone or you go to, or like, Gatlinburg, you don't know what county or what towns might be around there, so. It's getting a little better, but, so you may want to look at your area and like, your Lexington or your Nicholasville or your Harrisburg. You want to see which ones have maybe the least amount of Airbnbs and stick your one under that name heading if you're close, if you're actually in that vicinity, because that's what happened to us. I see a lot of competitors now, they'll be under each, they're trying to like grab market shares, or they throw their cabin under Sled, and understand under Rogers, under Camp, but it's the same cabin. So I don't know in Lexington if it's neighborhoods, if it's by different neighborhoods or just Lexington.
Yeah, I mean, we predominantly use the Airbnb platform and have seen great success with it. I always equate it to being the Zillow of the short-term space. Everybody's trying to catch up, no matter if you're VRBO, Booking.com, to be as automated and user-friendly as Airbnb is. I think their rollout was not planned as expectantly and kind of faced some challenges for some hosts. But like I said earlier, we use 6 different back-end platforms to kind of help with things, so we weren't necessarily as affected as most people were. But I think it's also pivoting and making sure you understand your market. So for example, we started to kind of see a trend where Airbnb or direct bookings weren't necessarily working as great for us, even through social media and pushing things. So even though we were getting 5-star reviews, they were great locations, and people were rebooking, we weren't filling in some of those vacancy dates that we needed. So you take that kind of property and say, okay, well, what's the next biggest thing that most people know of? Well, it's Vrbo. So you throw that property on Vrbo, well, you start to kind of get bookings from there too. I don't think Vrbo personally is as user-friendly or as attractive as Airbnb is, but it's something that's a tool that is free basically, and it's another platform that you can use to kind of fill in those days that are not necessarily booking on other platforms. And then I would also advocate too to kind of start learning and setting yourself up for direct bookings, or understanding on how you're going to use social media or websites to kind of push into a certain direction. And if you're going to do that and you're not taking the liability of direct booking, directing them to a platform one way or the other. But like, I think if you're smart and you use your website and social media strategically, people are going to book no matter what. They just need to be hooked from somewhere.
So if you get direct bookings, I mean, he hit the nail on the head with that response. I mean, direct bookings is what you want to get if you can get there. And sometimes you have to utilize platforms to get to that phase. But ultimately, your guest is going to spend less money. They're going to save money by booking directly with you. You're going to be able to keep more of that money because you're not paying the fees out to these other third-party vendors. So direct bookings is like probably where we all want to be, eventually. So I mean, like we like constantly want to get direct bookings. So we'll try and actually get people on Airbnb or VRB or wherever they're coming from, and get them in the cabin, and then get them to pre-book with us directly by remarketing to them. And that goes back to like having automated systems that, sends out emails, sends out text messages, checks in on these clients, sends them, if you have a vacancy, sends them special offers or whatever. All these automated tools are just going to help grow your business, help grow your client base. And once you get a good solid client base, you'll start to see your occupancy rate kind of level out and steadily increase.
Yeah, if you're in the central Kentucky market and if you can tap into the horse industry, and I don't mean like the thoroughbred industry, I mean all the people that are predominantly coming in and staying from April to October at the Kentucky Horse Park, you're going to be golden. We have hosted several guests that have stayed in an array of different kind of properties that we get repeat referral customers from them monthly, just because it's such a small, tight-knit community. And they might be coming here, and next thing you know, they want to go visit one of the distilleries, or they're wanting to go hike one day at the Red River Gorge, or they're coming in town to stay 16 days and are willing to spend $24,000. They don't blink an eye. If you can get into that demographic, or again, knowing your avatar on predominantly who you can focus and target on, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, because you can just start doing a repeat referral across it.
And I was thinking 3 years ago, we didn't even have Airbnb.
Yeah.
And the guys a slap in the face, I didn't even know what it was, because we were booked up all the time. Just our own website or social media or just, other advertising, and then Airbnb just came in like overnight with all their national advertising. Now people think they can only travel or go on vacation if they do an Airbnb. And I'm like, why are you doing that? You're spending extra money. You're paying Airbnb, and then the host has to pay it. And I'm like, a lot of times you can just Google that particular place you want to go to without doing an Airbnb, and half the time if you're a nice property manager, you're going to have your own site up and you can book direct and save money. And that really helps small business guys like us anyhow.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that when I go on vacation. I look at the property and I see if it's managed by a property management company, because then I know I can go, if it's, if they have a website, I can go directly through them and save some money.
If I find something on Expedia or something, I try to find it myself and then go directly, because that little business guy gets more money if you book directly with them.
Well, you save money too, so, yeah, it's a win-win.
Excellent answers. So that will conclude our phase 1 of tonight's presentation. Phase 2, we will now open the floor up for Q&A questions. How we will handle that, I will do first come, first serve, raise your hand, and we'll go in that order until we see fit. This gentleman right here, who I saw first.
My question probably is more applicable to Lexington at this point, but Atlanta as a metro market is really, because of housing shortages, are pushing short-term rentals out. I visit Boulder, Colorado a lot. They don't want more short-term rentals. Asheville's the same thing. Is there any concern, I'm not connected to our city council or anything, is there any concern about introducing or implementing regulations, guidelines, barriers to entry, or anything that's going to limit that we see, and then also just if you can speak to that maybe even in the Georgia area as well?
I'm actually on an advisory panel with Fayette County City Council, so we're actually in the process of going through all of that right now. I think you're going to start to see restrictions and barrier of entry start to increase, and from a management standpoint, I think that's a good thing, because I think you have a lot of investors right now who think they can just infiltrate this market and aren't offering the service that they should be to both their guests and their neighbors, because at the end of the day, your neighbors are your life expectancy for a short-term rental as well. And it's kind of causing a little bit of friction. I don't think the city or Fayette County as a whole wants to get rid of short-term rentals, because we have a lodging shortage, and Visit Lex understands the importance of how much money and funding that they're getting from short-term rentals. If you take last year, for example, out of the mix and you pulled all short-term rentals in Fayette County away, you're taking $8 million out of private investors who are in our audience right now outside of their pocket. So if you're pulling $8 million out, they're going to take that property, they're probably going to sell it, and they're going to go invest in another market that doesn't have restrictions, and guests are willing to travel. I think you can kind of see that. So I think, yes, there's going to be definitely restrictions and barrier of entries and permits and things like that, but I don't think it's going to be anything like a larger metropolitan area like Boulder or Atlanta or even Louisville.
In the blue.
Thank you. So Heath had mentioned some of the back-end systems and having like 6 back-end systems. I'd like to hear more about your systems and your systemization, especially if it's helped you more direct booking.
So with all of that, I think there's multiple like guesty, hospitable, things like that that have AI, so artificial intelligence. You're going to need a PM platform. I think you're gonna need a direct booking platform. You're gonna need automation to make sure that they're cross-correlating with one another. We also use a platform that pulls in all of the income from the platforms that we use, that then uploads into QuickBooks and makes it a little easier for us to do our P&Ls when we upload it into Buildium. So I think there's multiple platforms out there at different costs. Each one works differently for each different host. I would say do your research and jump on as many demos as possible, because some of the things that you're paying for, you might not need. And then some platforms offer other things that other platforms don't. If it were me and I was gonna be looking to do something and I had a few short-term rentals, I would find the tool that's gonna give me the most automation, but the most cost-effective.
I think it's gonna be specific to the individual. Like, you know, what I would use and what's gonna be good for me and my company may not work for Keith or Nancy. You know, I mean, it's just, I guess it just really depends on what you're looking for. You know, for me, it's more of like how can I make my systems and processes better across the board? So just kind of, you know, going back to what Keith said, is like looking at as many different demos. I mean, you know, when I started my company, I mean, it was just like, I don't know how many demos I jumped on. I probably spent months, like, just like one after the other, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here. But a lot of them, you know, will integrate, a lot of them won't integrate. So you definitely want to, you know, make sure you do your market research in terms of like, you know, if I'm going to use this platform and I'm using this function like QuickBooks, you know, is it going to integrate, or am I going to have to spend a lot more time, you know, pulling that data out, kind of manually inputting that data into here? It can just be, at the end of the day, it could be more time consuming for you.
It should make your life easier, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like,
Easier said
yeah,
than done.
it's all like personal preference, but I think the major things to me for automation are like, you know, responses, pricing automation, you know, doing things that like, you know, maybe having a platform that talks to other third-party platforms, you know, making sure your website, your booking calendar sync. I think that's huge. So those are just a few.
Here in the black.
It's kind of a follow-up to his question about the restrictions and barriers to entry in the short-term market. What are some of the things that are being proposed? Is it like, you know, a maximum number of short-term stays in a year, a tax, or what are some of the?
So that's something that we as a panel have been pushing them not to do because it's just not fair. And we explain that if you're taking that away, most of our average nightly rentals are under 2 nights in Fayette County, unless you're a larger listing. That it just doesn't work for our demographic that's traveling here. People are coming in for a concert or a basketball game or whatever it might be, or to visit a loved one in the hospital. They're not here necessarily for 5 days to a week. So it's more a barrier of entry as in like permitting, and like just paying to be able to be on the space with a permit and regulating in that standpoint. The city also doesn't necessarily have the manpower to be able to add this onto their task force. So it's just educating the city on what's a win-win situation for hosts, but also a win-win situation for the city and the people who are complaining about short-term rentals. So if you do own a short-term rental and you've had success and you want to continue, I highly encourage you to reach out to your local city council member just to kind of tell them about your experience and what you're being able to bring to the table. The amount of guests that we have that are repeat customers, or even people that have been moving into the area because of a stay with us has been huge. I mean, we have one client that had an excellent stay with us at 3 different properties, ended up purchasing another home, and now they rent it out as an Airbnb and come here and look and stay when they want to. I think too, as COVID hit, a lot of people are able to have jobs that are high profile jobs, but they're not going into the office anymore. So they're moving to other areas and they're testing markets. So it's a way for you to, people always complain that you're taking the neighbor out of the neighborhood, but actually you're bringing the neighbor back into the neighborhood, in my opinion, because you're bringing people into a house or an area, you're making sure that it's staying highly maintained, and you're introducing them into a city from a local standpoint on why Lexington is so good to live in.
I think I had a question over here. No? Okay. I I know, guy in the black, in the very back.
So I know a few of y'all are pretty active in the George area. One of the basic things from the operating side is the management. I think some of y'all actually do the management as well. So in the Gorge, I've seen from 20 to 40% kind of the management range. Can y'all talk about that range a little bit, what you're getting for the higher end and what you're not getting for the lower end, and where you see most operators, where they want to go, where they want to be? Is it the lower side, or they want more capability for them?
When you say operator, you mean like the owner?
The owner of it, correct. Yep, they want
Okay.
someone else to run it for them.
Yeah, so I mean, the owner's obviously gonna want the lowest rate possible, but like with, with low rates, it's like, what are you getting? In the Gorge, we're 45 minutes away, I mean, and that's on the, from like a major box store. So if something like happens, like our maintenance guys are driving typically to Lexington to get stuff and then bring it back. And people like to compare rates from like Lexington to the Gorge to Gatlinburg. You can't really compare the Gorge area to like Gatlinburg, because just travel time in general is going to be significantly less in Gatlinburg because it's so developed. The Gorge is not developed. I mean, Campton didn't have running water 10 years ago. So I mean, they just started getting internet out there. Nancy's probably seen it. She's lived down there for, I don't know.
Yeah. I've been in business over 20 years. I've only lived for 12 because I've been at Cincinnati for a while. But yeah, you're right. With competition, it is, the rates are all over the board. But some people who might have a lower commission rate are charging, I hear people say, well, they nickel and dime me to death. So they might have a lower rate, or 30% or whatever, but they're going to nickel and dime for every little thing they do. Whereas other people might be higher end of the commission who are paying everything, all your supplies, linens, towels, battery, who knows what, all the supplies. So it's hard to compare, like he said, apples to apples. Because I have a lot of times people always ask me, what's your property management contract? I'm like, well, I don't want you going comparing it because everyone's totally different.
Yeah.
So,
And it really depends on the property too, because like when you get out there, like you're dealing with stuff that you don't deal with in the city. You're dealing with cisterns, you're dealing with well pumps, well houses.
absolutely.
You're dealing with, a lot of hot tubs. I mean, you do that in the city too, but, your septic systems.
Satellite systems go down all the
Yeah,
time. The
satellite,
trees are growing
yeah,
and falling,
internet,
and like
yeah.
he says, it's very difficult. Like we have the whole garage full of supplies because otherwise we got to run to Lexington all the time. So that's a lot of cost.
Thank God for Amazon.
When there's nobody around, when there's no Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever in your backyard, you have to either stock up or you're paying people to run around to get supplies to maintain somebody's cabin. And we
Yeah.
find more and more that, I don't know about you all, but none of the owners want to maintain it in their own cabins. They
No.
all want it hands-on. Half of them don't know how to fix a toilet. They don't know how to do anything anyhow, but they want you to do everything, turnkey 100%. That's fine, well, we can provide that, but there is a cost to that.
Yeah, there is. So our rates vary, and it depends on do you have city water? If you do, okay, it's probably going to be a lesser rate because we don't have to maintain the well house. We don't have to maintain or bring in water. Because if so up in this area called Pine Ridge right now, you can't get water. And they're so high up that a lot of people can't even drill, the wells that they're drilling up there are dry. And so now you have to have a cistern, you have to have water brought in. So if we have to manage that, that's a logistical, it's more,
Nightmare.
it's a logistical nightmare. Because then you gotta we're out of water. Like we had to put a Wi-Fi, they have these Wi-Fi kind of float pumps now on the cisterns that tell you when it's getting low, and it'll send you a notification to your phone. And so then we call the fire department. Fire department's got to bring water out, and then then it happens. It's just more. So I guess what I'm saying is the more that we have to do, the further that we have to travel, the higher the rate's going to be. It's not just one set rate. Whereas Lexington, if we were in Lexington, it would probably just be one rate. Because it would be pretty easy to manage. It'd be pretty easy to get to everything. We know everything's on city water and on sewer, on city trash pickup typically. So.
And I think the biggest misconception is when you hire a property manager, you think you're paying them for everything. The management fee is for the scope of management. It's for the certain areas that you are paying for. And that should be your number one question is, whatever this percentage is, whether it's a traditional rental or a short-term rental, what does this management fee pay for? And then outside of that is either some areas, like they have just mentioned, you might have a higher management fee because they're building in those things that are outside of the scope of management to offset those expenses. Or some companies will charge you an hourly rate, or X service is X amount of dollars. So I think understanding the world of property management is rule number one. And then two, figuring out with whatever property management company you're gonna go with, what services are you getting for what rate? And then if you're not getting certain services that you want, what does that cost you?
And if you can provide more services, if you live locally and you're gonna run down and do cleaning or maintenance all the time, negotiate that. Great.
Right here in the gray Kentucky hat.
I think, just touching on financing a little bit, I think earlier Patrick mentioned a product where they took potential future earnings in it when they were performing the underwriting.
Yeah.
That sounds like a DSCR loan. Is that something that you'd obtain from a local bank or credit union?
This was a North Point Bank with the E, NORTHPOINTE bank out of Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I did another one with Whitaker down there in Stanton, Chris Allen.
Was it a DS, like a debt service coverage ratio loan, or was it?
It was a
commercial
commercial. It was a commercial
product?
business loan. Yeah.
To touch on that, a lot of lenders are starting to, like Patrick mentioned, kind of understand short-term rental a little bit more. So it might be worth maybe kind of calling around and see how they handle those. Same thing with appraisers. Appraisers are normally going to look at the property if it was not as a short-term rental a lot of times, and just maybe like a standard single-family home and would use comp that, even though the rental income should obviously probably affect the value of the property. They're not quite caught up to that, so consider that whenever you're looking at your lending, that maybe the rental income from a short-term rental standpoint won't make as big a difference as you think it might. So, any other questions in the blue here?
I was just wondering, with all the systems that you all have in place and stuff like that, I'm kind of still on the, like, I'm my own cleaner, I'm my own property management. So how do you guys like manage and not let the different types of homes and cabins fall through the cracks and still give them all the same attention?
Expectations and checklist.
Yeah.
Exactly, a lot of checks.
And to know the answers to when a guest has a question or there's an issue at a property, how you're going to resolve that, or what you're create an FAQ list and how do you respond to those. And create is the 80-20 principle rule too on what's 20% that's going to give you 80% of your results, and then vice versa. Especially in the short-term space, you can have guests that will literally run you to death over the smallest of things. However, it's sometimes important, but it's also, you have to create boundaries. So as much as you can prepare on the front end and explain to them how the process of booking with you is going to work, I am amazed, and I network with a lot of people throughout the country. People that travel to Central Kentucky are some of the most neediest people I have ever met. Like, you go to the beach and you're paying $1,000 a night and you don't even get toilet paper or paper towels. They come here and they're there for one night, they expect 10 rolls. I don't understand it. But it's understanding and explaining to them what they're gonna get when they stay at your property. I think a tool too would be, from an automation standpoint, is creating a personal video and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I am your personal host, putting a face to a name. If there's anything that you need, please let me know. I'm attaching a link that has all of our frequently asked questions from guests and how we operate. I think that will save you too. And then just making sure that you understand your standards of what your property is gonna be from the time a guest checks in, scuff marks or AC issues or whatever that is, what's on the level of high importance or what's on the level of low.
Head over here.
Just need good training. Someone to train them, you have a checklist, they have a training you, and then, a checklist. And another thing that we do is we put the housekeeper's name in the hat so that people have a problem, they call the housekeeper, they don't need to call the office right away. So make the housekeeper responsible. If they
Yeah,
forgot something, they gotta take it over there.
Like he said, the boundaries and check this. Two best friends. Two best friends. They will get you a long way.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So over here.
This is really for the panel. I noticed there were some issues with financing. I'm a broker, and if you guys need financing for these type of Airbnb rentals, I can get you up to $5 million for Airbnb rentals, as long as it's in a good location like the Gorge or like. So there you go.
Any other questions? All right, in front.
How do you prevent a disaster? Like what? I had one where they weren't reviewed. I was really busy that day, and I had them send me an ID in the email, and I didn't look that their email ID was different than their ID, and ran into some kind of party.
Yeah.
So what kind of procedures do you guys do for new Airbnb and VRBO users that can help prevent that type of situation?
So 35% of all guests that are booking on a short-term platform are booking for the first time ever. So you're going to kind of run into that issue quite frequently. Creating standards, instant book, those kind of things, making sure there's verified IDs or pictures. I always joke it's with traditional rentals too. You can't screen crazy. I mean, they might be the picture perfect person. I mean, we've had an instance where they had 10 5-star reviews and ended up leaving the property not the way they should have. I would just say be very heavy on your screening and how you handle situations. Noise aware is a great system to use from a noise perspective level. Security cameras, even if you don't have security cameras, making sure that's mentioned in your listing is one way too. And just constant communication on why are you traveling here? What's going on? If you got a gut feeling that something weird is happening, trust your gut. And just asking probing questions and understanding that at the end of the day, they're booking with you and you're booking with them. So it's okay not to say no, or it's okay to say no. But yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, we host over 400 and something guests a month. And honestly, we might have 1 or 2 guests out of that 400 that leaves a property the way they're not supposed to. But it's creating systems and checklists and you'll get the hang of it and you'll kind of start to see patterns. And it's a lot of people too that I've found that the profile's just, I don't know. Once you get into it, you can just start to tell. You're like, something's not matching up. Yeah, red flag in this area. And go ahead and block that profile. Especially we typically don't rent to locals either, depending on what market you're in. Just because typically those are people that are asking for trouble.
And they would.
Yeah, they want to throw parties typically. So, yeah, I think just having security cameras up, even if it's just a Ring doorbell, that way, because they can show you an ID, but you want to verify that that's who's actually showing up to the property. Because I can book a property and then send that reservation to my buddy and then he can go stay there and do whatever. So we actually have a blacklist of people that we don't rent to.
We threaten with a security guard too. So
Yeah.
just tell them, security guard in your area, and we list all the rules, like no loud parties, no loud noise, quiet hour, 10 p.m., so that. And then a lot of people oh,
Yeah.
it's a security area, so.
Cameras are your best friends.
Okay.
And if you got a weird feeling, Facebook stalk them.
That's a good idea.
No, but I seriously do. I will go on, if they don't have any reviews, I will go on all their social media platforms. I will search their girlfriend. I will search their best friend, just to get their personality
You've got a
type.
whole new business.
Yes, I should. But that's because I like, again, I control everything in my business. So if they don't have any reviews, but I know I can easily access some information that they're putting out there, I'll go find it. And I will also, we've got security cameras on the property. We are usually fairly close every weekend, so if something's going on, we'll message them real quick, hey, what's going on? Typically they respond back pretty quickly. If not, then we know that that's.
So then you have a good cell
probably
phone area.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're very lucky.
Have you ever had to stop it mid-stay?
Yeah, what? So not yet. So we did have an incident where someone booked it, kind of like in your situation. They left the premises and left their underage child in the tent. There were some damages that incurred. We did not realize they left. I kind of had a suspicion, but I didn't want to be overbearing, the overbearing host. but it all came out in the wash, but
Typically, they're one-nighters and they're last-minute bookings.
it was someone local.
Yeah,
It
they
was
are.
someone local.
They are. Yep,
So,
And like she said, it's okay to get on social media and see, like, research the name, and then you're looking for that profile picture and trying to see if it really matches, especially with like their areas and stuff. I mean, it's gonna happen. It's just how can you prevent it as much as possible. A book to read, Hospitable Host is a new book that just recently came out. And it's stories and tales from all kinds of different high profile hosts from across the world that give some cool stories and ways to combat things. So, yes.
All right, I will take 2 more questions from the audience. This guy's taking 1.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, this question's kind of a little bit on pricing, like a scenario-based question, maybe a little bit on the tax side too. If you have, how would you view, let's say, a $50 booking with $150 cleaning fees, $200 in your pocket, ish, versus $150 stay with $50 cleaning fee, as far as from the tax, perspective? What is more beneficial? Because I know, like, if you're trying to adjust the prices, if you lower it to, I'm using an extreme example to highlight the point, because if you lower it to a $50 stay, it might not attract the type of guests that you want. But just from like a dollars and cents standpoint, which would you view better and more beneficial to you? Because the tax benefits of
Tax cleaning fees now. My account has those tax and cleaning fees.
lovely.
So, like in our case, if it's a $50 cleaning fee, we could charge the guest $55 because we are very strict with taxes, and we just have to pay that tax.
And your service fee gets charged on the entire booking price, not just the nightly rate. I would say predominantly too, guests are looking, and each platform is different on how they change this, because sometimes you'll look at a property and you see the total price, and then the next time you look at it, you only see the nightly rate. And that's one of probably the number 1 questions we have from our clients asking. It's supposed to be $500 a night, but it's showing $250. Why is it showing $250? Well, it's just the way the world works. I would say focus more on your price and not your cleaning fee.
Yeah.
Because people too are doing price parameters. They're not doing price plus your cleaning fee. If they see that a property is $500 a night and a $200 cleaning fee, and they're looking at the competition around you, and that competition is X, Y, and Z, then they start to compare your cleaning rates. And then 2, they start to compare your amenities, the things that you have to offer. And then they're looking at your reviews. So I would always say lead with price.
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot of people too are like they're like bundling it in one, so they'll do like no cleaning fee, but their price is higher. So it's kind of
And a
like,
lot of new websites now, I've noticed, will advertise, like he said, 1 fee, like a lot of people, $100 a night. I'm like, wow, that's because they're advertising the Tuesday night, February 20th, the winter time, and then your summer rate's $900 a night.
Gotcha.
So you go there and you book and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened here? So a lot of these programs, you gotta go all the way to the very end to find the total cost, because there's a service fee, there's a commission fee, there's a management fee, there's a cleaning fee. So a lot of people who, if they're lowballing you, be very suspicious, because that's not what they're doing. They'll have a ton of extra fees tacked in at the very end, you look at all the clicks and all the clicks and all the clicks, and you're like shocked when you get to the bottom.
We also tried actually taking out our cleaning fee and charging more per night when we first started. Just because we knew it really wouldn't take a whole lot to get up there, we're like, we'll just leave it like that. But we've actually done better lowering, focusing more on the price, adding a little bit of a cleaning fee, and it's been uphill ever since.
and I'll say,
Yeah, it's helped.
I'll say this, if you when you're starting out, like if you're just getting a short-term rental, like price yourself competitively to where you can build your client base. And then start moving your price to where you want it. You'll get reviews faster, you'll start ranking faster, start building your client base faster. Especially if you're providing like good amenities and you have your price is lower than everybody else's, your cleaning fees are lower than everybody else's. I get that people want to make money, but I think like when you're first starting out, it's a huge benefit to do something like that.
In your first 60 to 120 days are going to be probably slow when you launch a short-term rental. So just like what Patrick said, like the more strategic you can be in the beginning, the better off your longevity of the property is going to be. Because you're competing with people that have something on the market for 3 to 5 years. Your product's probably a lot better than theirs, However, they have the experience. So pricing appropriately and always focusing on pricing.
Just as a reminder, we will be giving away a couple of prizes here at the end, but I will take one more question if anybody would like here in the blue.
How would you go about either managing or just a strategy in general, investing in an Airbnb that would be kind of far away that would also double as a vacation?
Yeah, I would make sure that when you do that, the management company that you decide to partner with, I mean, are you talking about managing it yourself or having someone else manage it?
Either way.
So managing it yourself, you're gonna have to have a lot of systems and processes in place. Like you're gonna have to hire, go out, find you couple solid maintenance people, find you some good housekeepers. Don't just focus on one. Like get a couple that if one doesn't show up, because it's gonna happen, and then you got somebody coming in, you got a same day turn or something, and that house doesn't get flipped, then you got somebody coming in that's, that's their vacation, and that's gonna create a sour taste in their mouth if it's not cleaned properly. If you're hiring a management company, I would make sure that management company allows you to utilize that property, the amount of time that you're looking to use it. So let's say you want to use it, a month out of the year, or 2 months out of the year, whatever that number is, make sure that they're flexible on that.
And look for the least penalties possible. So like, for example, we don't charge penalties for if somebody wants to personally use their property that they own. We do charge them the cleaning fee though, because it has to be to the standard of what the guest expects when they arrive. Unless that client starts to abuse their power on how much they're staying. And we don't offer cancellations. So if it's already booked and you want to come in for that weekend, I'm sorry, you can't personally use that property. And then just like Patrick said, like making sure you have your systems. Like if you're over 2 hours away and your cleaner calls that morning and they can't get there, you have a crisis on your hands. So what are you going to do? Especially if you're self-managing from that afar. Because it's going to happen. It's not if, it's when it's going to happen.
I would say it's, maybe I'm kind of biased here, but I would say if you have, like if I were to get into another market, I don't think I would manage it myself, just because I know how much work it takes to do it.
And how much is your time worth?
Yeah, and how much, yeah,
Back
exactly.
into, are you $50 an hour or are you $500 an hour? If you're spending X amount of hours and staying up till midnight every night answering guest communication, is that worth your time? Or is it better to pay 20 or 40%, achieve 5-star reviews and great success, and have more passive income?
I look at it, a good mentor of mine taught me this trick of like stepping over $100 bills to pick up pennies. You don't want to get into that scenario. So like, getting back to what he said, it's like, what are you good at? How much time do you want to get involved in that aspect? What are you going to get in return from it? And I think just understanding, like, if you do hire a management company, know what to expect from them. Like, know what their management fees are, know what they're going to be giving you, know what their other charges are going to be before signing a contract with them.
I know that some of you all are likely some landlords. I do have Richard in the back. I think that would like to say a word for the association here. Go ahead and make it quick.
Yes, sorry.
No, you can.
We have a lot of similar members in our group coming here, and Jim comes a lot. Speaking of these guys, what he said, whatever we work with all the Lexington landlords, whether you have one property or a couple hundred. It's $25 to join. We meet the first Tuesday of every month. It's the Supreme Hibachi Buffet out at Bryan Station, New Circle Road. What Heath was saying earlier was local politicians. I deal with local, federal, and state. If you can talk with them and talk with them. A lot of people want to yell at them or send them chain emails. That's not the way to go. The most valuable thing you can have from any politician, and sometimes it's hard to get it, but you can get their cell number, not to call them, but to text them. You can text them during session and they'll answer questions on a bill that's going on right then and there. So we have, last month we had Senator Alvarado speak, we've had council, we've had mayor, we've had the PBA, we've had code enforcement, we've worked with people that come in and help us with the money to help renters get rental assistance with the federal and state guidelines. So we provide a wealth of knowledge and a lot of connections, and we're starting to kind of infiltrate the apartment association. We work with them. So And the other thing that she said here about Facebook, my wife's a lawyer, so trust me, lawyers look at everything you do on social media. My wife will have somebody say, I can't work, I've got to have $5 million, and they're out jet skiing on Facebook. So lawyers do look at that stuff, just as a word on the side. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So now we get to the fun stuff. Scott.
Hey, how y'all
Yeah,
doing?
let's come up here, bring it up here.
You guys ready to hear a really long speech?
Yeah. Scott's got tons of data he would like to share.
My name's Scott Beats. I know a lot of you all. I'm an investor here in town, an agent. I work with mostly investors at this point. And so, like I said, I keep this real short. If you're looking to sell, now's the time. I can get you top dollar. One of the things I offer is that I do a lot of flips. I'll go in and I'll help do painting. I'll help clean. I'll do landscaping. So my goal is to make it easy for you all to sell your property as possible. And so 6 months from now, I don't know if you're going to get what you get today. So just remember that. So give me a shout. If you have my card or anything, you can always get in touch with me. And so, Jim, would you like to do the honor?
No, it's your game, man.
All right, here we go.
Please get your tickets out.
881184. You got. They probably left. You?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Good break. At the Christmas party, my wife pulled my name. It was awesome. All right, here we go. 881116. Chance. Big winner. Going once, going twice. All right. 881188. There we go. All right. Yeah.
You can take that to her.
You got it.
As everybody knows, I'm a big Bigger Pockets fan, so I have tonight from my own personal collection, Burr Book by David Green, who is the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast now. And this is a signed copy, which is rare to come across. So we will draw for that now. And this will conclude our night. Lucky participant is 881187. 87. Yay!